Well, hello.
Hi.
Nice to see you
This
again.
is so good. So this is never to diagnose. This is never to say this is what you have or you're going to have it.
Sure.
What we're going to be doing is actually just checking out and saying, okay, well, these are shown patterns that are correlated with health, and those that are correlated with kind of start a decreasing of that health. We're going to talk about probably three big things: processing speed, processing power, and then kind of connectivity, how well the different rooms of the brain talk to each other. Those are kind of like the big three that have been shown in the literature to correlate with the beginnings or the decreasings of mental function, and then eventually, mild cognitive impairment, and then it could be eventually things like Alzheimer's or Lewy body dementia. But the whole point is, ideally, you catch these things sooner. There's a pretty long window of time that people can begin to influence it. And that's usually 40s, 50s, maybe early 60s, depending on who you are. That's the time to do things. Right? That's the time to make the investments, make the lifestyle changes, do all those things. Once we're already in our 80s, kind of like it's
Yeah, it is what it is.
Yeah. So what we're going to be doing today is looking at basically three things, and I'm going to grossly oversimplify. Right?
Thank you.
Okay, totally. So the speed of our processing, how strong the brain is. So, and that's basically measured in power. So like literally how much electricity is the brain producing. Mm-hmm. So processing speed, processing power. And then the last is going to be basically connectivity, how well the different rooms of the brain talk to each other. So if our connections aren't right, that becomes an issue, right? And that begins to affect
Right.
us.
So I can definitely tell you that, my comprehension and memory desperately need to work on. So I'm really glad to have this opportunity to study it, work on it, and fix it. And even like if I watch a movie, and they're like, "Tell me what it's about." I'm like, "Well, I can't.
Right.
I could feel it, and I cried through the movie, and I've seen it, and I know the story, but it's really hard for me to articulate it out and share it."
Yes.
And I literally just probably saw it, if not a couple hours ago or the day before.
Yeah. Right.
And then it's a horrible feeling, because then you go back to that feeling of like inadequate, and then you just make up in other ways, and it's kind of exhausting.
Exhausting.
Yeah.
Fortunately, you have blazing fast processing speed, which is helpful, and that helps because when that processing speed goes down, that's what we call declarative memory, and that's the basically, what's that word? I'm trying to remember that word, right? And so what happens is if we're already if we're slower in the processing speed, and we begin to slow down with age, or we go into mild cognitive impairment where that slows down even further. Alzheimer's, it slowed down tremendously. But there's this little kind of gradual slowing, and what we see is the beginning of the slowing is like more and more of that kind of word recall gets disrupted, right? Now, you're fortunate and blessed to have really, really fast processing, probably genetically, so you have actually more of an on-ramp to slow down before you're going to get to the point where you're like, well, what's that one word? And in general, your brain power, how big the brain waves are, is actually very nice and healthy and good. Speed is, in general, when we're,
That's the light blue we're looking at?
And so now we're looking at this little bump right here. And again, there's other ways that we could do it. In short, this is our processing speed. And this is literally how quickly is our brain taking snapshots of reality. 10 is kind of a good average. You're sitting somewhere around 11 and a half
Is it
hertz,
the light blue that you're
which is the light blue.
Okay.
Well, what does that mean? It means that, hey, you already have been gifted genetically with really fast processing speed, which is rocking. As we age, we naturally start going towards the, a half a hertz slower, 3/4 of a hertz slower as time goes on. But again, you have the capacity that you already start really fast, and so you probably won't start noticing too much of the word recall stuff, maybe because of the connectivity.
Yeah.
So you've got good power and good speed. The thing that's going to be always the challenge with you, it's what we mentioned last time, is the connectivity. Mm-hmm. What we mean by connectivity, it's not that like, oh my gosh, there's no wires between my front and my back. No, there are. Those are connections. They're called tracts. It's all there. It's just that when one room fires, the other rooms don't fire as well together as a network. And that's when we feel like my memory's off. I don't remember that movie that I watched, right? That's the narrative memory. Or I feel like, so and so told me all these things, and then my husband asked, well, what did he say? It's like, I don't know, right? It's hard to make that connection. And of the three things, that's going to be the big one. The different rooms of the brain need to be able to fire. They need to be strong. They need to get good blood flow, and they need to work together. The same way that I want all my muscles to be healthy, I want them to be strong, and I want them to be coordinated. And so the same thing that I want for the muscles in my body, I want to be able to do for the areas of my brain. In general, of the three, 2 out of the 3 are still rocking. I think they're doing very, very well. 1 out of the 3 is the area that I would say is the area of focus, right? That we want to really make sure that we continue to improve on. And so, and that's going to be the connectivity, because we're actually looking at your brain, comparing the connectivity to other women your age. Okay, so it was a lot.
It was. I'm like, can you write all this down for me so
Right,
I can remember this?
I'll send it to you. Right,
I was going to say, what you talking about? I don't know.
What did he say?
I think it was speed, power, right?
Yes.
Speed, power, and
connections.
Connection. Speed. Okay.
Yeah.
I remember that.
Yeah, totally.
Okay.
So speed and power are good.
Okay.
The connections are something that we want to work on.
Definitely. I feel like when I'm at my desk and like I am thinking at everything at one time, like it is so overwhelming, and I just and it doesn't make sense to me. And lately, I've had to like literally walk away from my desk because I'm just like overwhelmed, and it doesn't feel good, and I just feel inadequate and almost even like exhausted, and I just want to just cry and run. Yeah. And I have. Yeah. Yeah, it's not a good feeling.
Right. What's interesting about yours is you have speedy fast.
I feel it. Like I feel my brain gyrating sometimes. It's just like, and I can't even sit still to do one thing. Because if I'm doing one thing here, then I'm already looking at my list over here, and then Yeah,
right. And that's exactly what I was going to say. So speedy fast, but not coordinated.
Correct.
Right. And so there's a lot of that bouncing and flipping around and going through there. So with neurofeedback, we would focus on actually regulating the speed a little bit.
Right. Speed.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it's not to make it faster. It's going to be to make it a little bit more coordinated. It's literally how fast a certain part of the brain is doing this.
And you said mine is like.
It's fast.
And I feel it.
You feel that.
I do.
Yeah, totally. The challenge is that it's not very coordinated, right? And so it's not as rhythmic. Excuse me.
So it doesn't have a good dance move.
Yes, and that's called.
Okay.
Yeah. So it can't hold a beat. And so what we would work on is improving what's called thalamocortical rhythm, helping the thalamus be more rhythmic.
Okay.
Right, does that, right? So that's one. And the second thing that we would do is actually start working on, like we can't go to every room and tell them how to talk to each other, but there are certain rooms that are, they're over kind of like where a lot of hallways cross through. Basically we call those little network hubs. And we would basically train those regions to be able to fire a little bit better, so that when those rooms work better, other rooms can that need that room to talk to each other and work as a group can work better, right?
So then the information can stick.
And so that the information will begin to stick, right? And what we are going to try to do is teach rooms to fire as a group.
Okay.
Neurons that fire together, wire together. We're going to be doing primarily regions that have to do with the left side. And the left side is where narrative memory is occurring, where executive function and planning is occurring. Because a lot of the things that we're seeing getting disrupted, even some like language processing, which is why sometimes it'll feel like there's a little bit of a learning, gap.
Yeah, big time.
At any age, which is pretty amazing, is that our brain continues to change. And so we can continue to train those rooms how to fire it in a more coordinated way. And what we often see is that we begin to see improved connectivity. And then, 2 to 3 times a week, but you're going to be doing this training so that as we go along, as time goes on, just like you go to the gym, we don't go one day and we get a six-pack, right? There'll be a certain amount of repetition, but at some point you start noticing, okay, you know what, I'm feeling a little bit sharper, I'm feeling like I'm not reaching for things as much. But for you, what we're going to be expecting is probably by about session 10 to 15-ish, right, which is our first third, is when we're going to start looking at executive function, some planning, some language, remembering, most things that have to do with language, just connecting. And again, we'll probably do a round. We're going to remap at 20 so we can compare, and then we're going to remap at 40 so that we can continue to see, progress as we move along. How would you know that this was a success for you in the next 40 sessions, or the next 4 months?
Well, how will I know? I'll know just based on how I feel during the day, sitting in front of that computer, and whether processing and understanding the information that I have to deal with and work with. I'll know that I can feel or see or know that the changes have happened. My hope would be I'm going to invest myself, so I want to win. I want to get to the next level. Yeah. it's an investment in myself, and I want to give myself that opportunity. It's just been, a struggle for so long in my life just to finally now understand it. From our first session, I don't want to live like that anymore, or get to a place where if I can help, if I'm going to have dementia or whatever later on in the future, or Alzheimer, whatever, that is, like my mom or my aunts, if I can help it, I would love that. I want to live a long, healthy life. I want to enjoy my grandchildren. I don't want to forget their names. I don't want to forget, I don't want to have this. I mean, I do repeat myself, but I don't want to keep on repeating myself, telling the same story an hour after we just had the conversation. Because it's, I'm sure it's frustrating. I know it's frustrating, like when I'm witnessing how my mom is, and I don't want to, be that way when my kids one day have to, be there for me when I need them. It's a struggle. It's hard, so that's what I hope.
Yeah. Good. Yeah. And so, we'll do one thing at a time, and we're going to work on this one, and this one's going to be getting some more blood flow in that region, getting some more connections in that region, getting the language processing back up, getting the we call narrative memory back up, and let's see where we're at.
Yeah, and that's just so helpful to understand that, because as an individual, just dealing with that and just how my brain works, like it's you don't feel good about yourself. So your self-esteem, even if you get older, you're going to care about your self-esteem. Doesn't go away.
Right.
You want to always feel good about yourself.
Yes.
The profession that I'm in, it's a lot of information, and it's very hard for me to process, understand, remember, and learn it.
Right.
And I'm not kidding. Like, I'm in tears most of the time.
Yeah. Totally.
I didn't know about it. I wish I knew about it years ago. I wish I knew about it growing up. Because then my discovery of ADD, so I've got that combination too.
Yes.
So I wish I would know.
Yeah.
So how many trainings are we going to do a week?
I think 3 a week is perfect.
Okay.
I think 3 a week is ideal. 2 to 3 is the kind of sweet spot for most people. You have very fast processing. For some people, we can't do 3. The brain isn't strong enough to handle it. And so with you, it'll be just fine. This time around, I probably will start to give you some recommendations on like exercise and foods and things like that. That would be great. I try not to throw too much at people in the beginning, but I think you're ready. You're
desperate,
primed.
eager, honestly.
Yeah, totally. And so we're going to curate a few things.
Yeah, I like that.
Right. We know exactly what you need here, and then we know how bringing in these supplements are going to help what we're doing here.
Okay.
And then by these exercises are going to coordinate together, so there's this kind of curated aspect to it. Right?
Yeah. And then after the 40 sessions, I mean, my experience the last time, like it sticks, right? Like, how long does it last, right?
Yeah, totally. Yep. Depending on where we are in our cycle, right? Depending on how steep the decline has been, we want to, the lastingness is not so much we want things to last. And yet we know that there are certain aspects of aging that we can't control, and so it slows things down. Cool. Right. I'm excited.
Me too.
Yeah.